inequality and the bottom line mentality a revolution in the making. And I hope that what this means might become clear to you as I continue talking this morning. What does the term inequality mean to you? Have you ever had an experience of inequality, and if so, what was it? Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to talk about this in front of everybody here today. It's just a rhetorical question, really. While there are many forms and types of inequality in the world today, most of us understand it as a situation where people get treated differently because of things like their religion or their colour, their race or their gender, which is my area of research interest and the focus of my talk today. When I was in my 30s and young, it was considered to be really strange and weird to be single and childless. But I was single and childless throughout my 30s and my 40s. And I used to regularly get asked, why aren't you married? And why haven't you got children? I used to feel as if I was being treated differently when I got asked questions like this. But apart from feeling a little bit hurt and sometimes irritated, it didn't really have a bigger impact on me than that. I think probably all of you in here can think of times when you feel as if you've been treated differently because you're not conforming to some norm or other. But you wouldn't necessarily interpret that as meaning that you are being treated unequally. Being treated differently can be something that gives you a little bit of pain, like my own personal experience that I've just shared with you. Or it can be something utterly radical and barbaric, like when slavery was common across the world in the 17th and 18th centuries. Being treated differently becomes inequality when we start to see definite differences in particular material outcomes between groups. There might be differences, for example, in pay or income, or differences in educational attainment, or differences in access to different jobs and occupations. The interesting thing is that these material differences might not feel that obvious to those people who are apparently experiencing them. We can see them when we look at charts and graphs showing income differentials between groups, or showing which groups are and are not in the top jobs in society. But while we can see them, we may not feel them. Now, whether we feel these things or not, there is now widespread acceptance across the world that there are such things as gender inequalities, and that these take many forms, and that they are caused by the fact that women are treated differently to men. So we've got the gender pay gap, which you might have read about because it's been in the news a lot lately. Because in the UK, organisations are being asked to think about why it is that men are paid more than women in lots of different jobs and occupations. And organisations are being asked to do something about it and to be accountable for it and report what they're doing and to show whether that gap is narrowing. And then there's something called gendered occupational segregation, which is a hell of a mouthful, a bit like that introduction that Pua was there to give for me. And all that this refers to is the fact that men and women tend to be found in different jobs and occupations. The reasons for the gender pay gap and for occupational segregation lie in one thing and one thing only, and this is that men's work is seen as more valuable and more important than women's work. Care work, for example, which we all became hugely conscious of throughout the pandemic, and boy, didn't we appreciate those care workers. In the UK, we stood on our doorsteps on a Wednesday evening and we clapped for our carers to show our appreciation. But care work is a job that's mainly done by women. It's classed as unskilled and it is really badly paid. But bricklaying, a job that is mainly done by men, is classed as semi-skilled and is paid better. But even when women are in the same occupations as men, they tend to be in quite particular roles. and they tend still not to be paid as much as men, and they tend not to be found in the top jobs in those occupations. Now, decades of research have gone into looking at these problems, and people have tried to come up with answers to them and come up with solutions. What can we do to close the pay gap and to try and make a difference to occupational segregation? And lots of different solutions have been developed, and people have come up with lots of different ideas about it. But the one that seems to have gained the popular attention, at least in the media, the one that you tend to read about more in newspapers, and certainly things that I hear about the thing I hear about in organisations. And this is the idea that given that not all women feel that they're being treated unequally or treated differently, that we need to focus our attention on the women who do feel that. And what we need to do is to teach them the knowledge and the skills and the behaviours that are valued in the jobs and the occupations and the career ladders that they want access to. And the argument goes, if we do that, if we teach them how to do these things, then they can compete with men on a much more level playing field, and things should get better. We should find more women in different types of jobs and being able to climb career ladders. That's the argument. But people like me have kind of put up a kind of objection to that and asked a different question. And the question that people like me ask, and it's not just me, it's lots of female academics have asked this as well, is, well, why do we value particular knowledge and skills and ways of behaving more than others in the first place? Why do we value, for example, the technical elements of a job, like perhaps being able to use a spreadsheet or measure things or quantify things, more than, say, being good at relationships or perhaps supporting people? So when we ask this question, what we're saying is, look, the problem of gender inequality doesn't really lie in how women, in the knowledge and skills that women have or in the way that they behave, but in the fact that the knowledge and the skills and the behaviours that men have are seen to be more valuable and more important to the organisation's goals. Now, the interesting thing about this is that this isn't seen as a problem in most organisations. And I know this because I do a lot of research in organisations. And so I've regularly asked in my work, in the various organisations I've been in, why do you value these knowledges and these skills and these ways of behaving more than any others? And they say to me, come on, it's simple. These are the job requirements. The nature of the job means that this is how you have to behave and what you have to know in order to meet those job requirements. It's the nature of the job. That is the conversation closed. Well, the idea I want to put to you today is that jobs don't have a nature. Jobs are designed to fulfill particular goals and particular purposes, and to be done in particular ways by powerful groups in organisations. And these goals and the ways that they have to be achieved more and more reflect something called the bottom line mentality. And the bottom line mentality refers to a situation where organisations, whether they're in the public or the private sector, put the pursuit of financial outcomes like efficiency and productivity and profit above any other outcome. So outcomes like trying to make the workplace a fulfilling and rewarding experience for employees, or trying to ensure that the organisation has a positive impact on the planet and not just on shareholder pockets, are either not seen as a priority or, worse of all, they're seen not to be important at all. And one of the consequences of the bottom line mentality is that particular types of employee get valued, the ones that are seen to be making a difference to the bottom line by doing things like working very long hours, or putting work before their homes and their families, or having a visible effect on profit or on sales, or on increasing or on saving money or decreasing costs. Organisational power holders would say, well, yes, of course, we value these employees because what they're doing is they're meeting the requirements that are demanded by the nature of the job. That's what these people would say. Now, one of the effects of this bottom line mentality is that the criteria that get used in organisations to judge the worth and value of employees, and therefore to make decisions about who does and doesn't get recruited, who does and doesn't get rewarded, and who does and doesn't get promoted, increasingly reflect the requirements of the bottom line. And these requirements are much more likely to be met by men as a group than by women as a group, which is one of the reasons why men earn more than women and why they tend to be found in the top jobs. Women managers, for example, whatever occupation they're in, doesn't matter, tend to be found in people-related roles, whereas male managers tend to be found in technical or customer or client-facing roles, which are seen as central to the bottom line, unlike people-related roles. So this is one of the effects of the bottom line mentality. Another effect, of course, is that if we see the answer to gender inequality as being teaching women how to behave in the ways that organisations value, then all we're doing is reinforcing and reproducing the bottom line. Add to this problem the fact that, as I've said before, not all women think that there is a problem in organisations anyway. They don't feel as if they're being treated unequally. They don't feel as if they're being treated differently. And another problem on top of that is, however, that some men do. And in organisations where I've done my research, men are saying to me, well, I'm not valued or recognised either, because I don't behave in ways that reflect the bottom line mentality, because I really believe in supporting and helping people. That's what I want to do as a manager. So where do I go with this? Because I've got no legal redress, I'm a man. So what do we do? Well, my view is that organisations have got to start thinking outside the straitjacket of the bottom line mentality and start thinking about what actually does count as a contribution in an organisation, because it's more than stuff that can be measured and seen in profit and so on. People in organisations do a lot more than add to the bottom line, don't they? People in organisations like to be recognised and rewarded because they're doing a good job. And importantly, one of the things about it is that people like to be able to feel that they want to come to work. How do you feel on a Monday morning? Do you wake up and think, wow, I'm going to work? Or do you wake up with a feeling of dread? When people feel unhappy in workplaces, they will leave if they can. And that is going to have an impact on the bottom line, which organisations seldom seem to factor into the calculations of success. Or when they lose their interest in or motivation for their work, then they leave holes, and those holes have to be filled by somebody in some way, and that all costs money. So contributions have to be seen as more than things that add to the bottom line. They've also got to be seen as things that have an indirect effect by doing things like improving team morale, or helping retain staff, or supporting staff. Or here's an absolutely really weird thing. How about recognising and valuing staff who do a great job? But it seems to me and my colleagues and friends and family and people who take part in my research studies that it's actually not good enough anymore to be good at your job, to be counted as a valuable employee. We're expected to do more and give more and more of ourselves. That's what we're expected to do. And what we're expected to do is visible things, like we're told to be innovative, whatever that means. And organisations love it if we do things that are visible and make the organisation look good to outsiders. Now, I've been banging on about this stuff for a long time, and nothing really seems to be changing. And, you know, why is that? You know, maybe because people are sick at the sight of me and hearing me going on about it. But, you know, actually one of the things that's happening because of the bottom line mentality and the fact that doing a good job isn't enough anymore to be considered a valuable employee is that people are starting to feel it, both men and women. And there's evidence now that young people in particular are kicking back at this. And they're saying, actually, I don't think it's okay that I work in an organisation where I have to do more and more just to be considered a reasonable employee. There's more to life than pay and money. And if you're going to demand this much of my time and energy, I'm off. And they're leaving. And this has been dubbed in the press as the Great Resignation. I think this is indicative of a growing awareness of the costs of making it in terms of career and status and pay that have been the biggest indicators of success in our society probably far too long. And I think this is starting to change. I think as people share this awareness between themselves and their friends and their family, and they go on social media to share it, what they're doing is questioning what success means. And I hear people more and more saying, success to me isn't about paying money. It's about doing things that I find rewarding and fulfilling. It's about living a life that I like and has meaning for me. And yes, work is part of that, but it's not everything. It's just a bit of what I want to do. And I'm going to define success in my own terms, is what they're saying to me. And I think as this gathers momentum, or at least I hope it will, and as people say, I'm not putting up with being treated like this anymore, actually. I work really hard, I do a great job, but it's never enough. You know what, I'm off. Please yourself, I'm going. And as this gathers momentum and more people leave organisations, then power holders are going to have to start to think, how do we retain staff? How do we keep them here? Well, you have to start valuing and rewarding them. That's what you've got to do. And my hope is that as this happens, we'll start to see the work that's currently mainly done by women, and other work as well, that helps the people and an organisation flourish and not just profit, will start to be seen as important and critical. And my hope is that over time, as this gathers pace, what we'll see is a big reduction in gender and other inequalities. And when that happens, my hope is that organisations themselves will start to realise that there is more to life than the bottom line. Thank you.